Okay, so picture this. My wife Sarah sends me to therapy. Not because I asked, not because we were having marriage counseling, but because I needed to fix myself. She said I was distant. She said I was quiet. She said I was just generally not enough. So fine, I thought. Maybe she's right. Maybe I am messed up. I'll go. I'll fix whatever it is I want to save my marriage. I loved her, or at least I thought I did. We had built a life together. 10 years married, 15 years total. A house, 2 kids, the whole suburban dream. This was supposed to be a pit stop on the road to happily ever after. A tune-up, that's all. I found a therapist online, Dr. Elena Ramirez. Her profile said she specialized in individual counseling, relationship dynamics, and stress management. Sounded perfect. I booked the first appointment, walked in, sat down on a ridiculously soft couch that felt like it was designed to make you spill your guts, and braced myself for the lecture. I expected her to nod, ask me about my feelings, tell me to communicate more, maybe give me some mindfulness exercises. Standard stuff, right? What she actually said shattered my entire world into a million tiny pieces. It wasn't a lecture. It wasn't an exercise. It was a direct, calm, almost chillingly simple statement. About 10 minutes into our very first session, after I'd barely finished explaining Sarah's complaints and my own vague sense of inadequacy, Dr. Ramirez looked at me, her eyes kind but unyielding, and said, "It sounds like you need to divorce your wife." I swear my heart stopped. The air left my lungs. For a moment, I thought I'd misheard her. Divorce my wife, the woman I had promised to spend forever with, the mother of my children? This was the first time I had ever seen this woman, Dr. Ramirez. She knew absolutely nothing about me, about Sarah, about our history. How could she possibly say something like that? It felt like a punch to the gut, a betrayal from someone who was supposed to be helping me repair, not demolish. I was here to become a better husband, to make Sarah happy, to mend whatever invisible cracks she saw in me. I was here to save us. And this stranger, this professional, this woman who held a degree in understanding human minds, just casually dropped the bomb. It wasn't a suggestion. It felt like a diagnosis. Like she saw something so fundamentally broken that the only cure was total amputation. I managed to stammer out, "What? Divorce? Are you serious? But why?" She didn't flinch. She just tilted her head slightly, her gaze unwavering. "Yes, I am serious, Mark. And we can explore the why, if you choose to continue these sessions. But based on what you've told me in just these 10 minutes, and the way you are describing your marriage and your wife's expectations, it appears you are in a relationship that is fundamentally undermining your well-being. And you are here because she sent you to fix yourself, rather than addressing what seems to be a significant imbalance of responsibility and emotional burden." My mind raced. Undermining my well-being? Imbalance of responsibility? Emotional burden? I just thought I was a bad husband. I thought I was failing to meet her needs. Sarah was always so clear about what she wanted, what I wasn't doing. She was just direct, I told myself. She just wanted the best for us, for me. I had convinced myself that any unhappiness was my fault, my failure to adapt, my inability to be what she needed. I had swallowed that narrative whole. It was my truth. It was our truth. But hearing those words from an outsider, a complete neutral party, it was like a sudden blinding flash of light on something I had deliberately kept in the dark for years. It was terrifying, and oddly, sickeningly, exhilarating at the same time. What if she was right? What if I wasn't the problem? What if I was trapped in something I didn't even realize was a cage? The thought made me feel both profoundly sad and strangely hopeful. though I couldn't admit that hope even to myself in that moment. All I could feel was the shock, the anger, the confusion, and the sudden, overwhelming sensation that my entire reality had just been ripped apart at the seams. And this was just the beginning. The rest of that first session was a blur, honestly. My brain was still trying to process the word divorce. It echoed in my head, bouncing off the walls of my skull like a deranged pinball. I couldn't focus on anything else Dr. Ramirez said. She kept talking about emotional health and patterns of behavior and unhealthy dynamics. But all I heard was the loud, insistent buzz of that one word, divorce. It felt like an accusation, like a judgment, like a sentence. When the session ended, I walked out into the bright afternoon sun feeling like a zombie. The world looked different. Colors seemed duller, sounds seemed muffled. I drove home on autopilot, trying to piece together how this had happened. How did I end up in a therapist's office, being told to end my marriage, when just an hour ago I was convinced I was going to fix it? I got home and Sarah was in the kitchen, humming while she chopped vegetables for dinner. The kids were upstairs, probably playing video games. 'Twas the picture of domestic bliss, the kind you see in commercials. And here I was, fresh off a therapy session where a professional had told me to blow it all up. "How was it, honey?" she asked, without looking up, her voice light. "Did you tell him about your quietness, your moods?" Him. She assumed it was a male therapist. It was always about my quietness, my moods. Never our problems. Never her part in anything. I just mumbled, "It was interesting," and retreated to the living room, collapsing onto the couch. I stared at the television, but I wasn't seeing anything. My mind kept replaying Dr. Ramirez's words. Why did Sarah send me to therapy? It started subtly, maybe a year ago. She'd say things like, "You seem distracted lately, Mark," or "Are you upset about something? You are so quiet." At first, I'd brush it off. "No, just tired," I'd say. But then it became more insistent. "You are always tired. You are never engaged with me. You are checked out." It escalated. She'd accuse me of not listening when she talked, even when I was trying my hardest. She'd say I didn't care about her feelings because I didn't react in the exact way she expected. If I was quiet, I was brooding. If I offered a solution, I was invalidating her. If I tried to comfort her, I was patronizing. There was always a reason why I was doing it wrong. I started to feel like I was walking on eggshells all the time. Every conversation was a potential minefield, and the sex. It had dwindled. She'd say she just wasn't feeling a connection, that I needed to put in more effort in our emotional intimacy before physical intimacy could happen. And since in her view I wasn't putting in the effort, we just stopped, which of course made me feel even more inadequate, more rejected. I started internalizing all of it. I truly believed I was the problem. I wasn't good enough. I wasn't loving enough. I wasn't attentive enough. I was failing her. I was failing our marriage. So when she finally sat me down a month ago and said, "Mark, I think you need to see someone. For you. I don't want us to end up like so-and-so, where they let things fester. I love you, but I need you to address whatever is going on inside you." It felt like a final ultimatum, and I accepted it. 'Cause if there was a chance to fix me, to fix us, I had to take it. I was desperate to get back to the perfect life we once had, or what I remembered as perfect. But was it ever perfect? That was the chilling question that started to surface. Was it ever truly balanced? Or had I always been bending, adjusting, apologizing, trying to fit into a mold she designed? The deeper I thought about it, the more I realized Sarah had always been the one in charge. Not in an obvious, mean way, more like she knew best. She handled the finances, the social calendar, the kids' activities, even what we watched on television. I just kind of followed. I thought that was a good thing. I thought it meant she was strong, decisive. I thought I was lucky to have someone so capable. Now, as I sat there, the therapist's words echoing, I began to see it differently. Her strength felt less like a partnership and more like control. Her knowing best felt less like guidance and more like absolute decree. My quietness wasn't just my personality, it was my retreat. My distance wasn't me being checked out. It was me shutting down to protect myself from constant criticism. It was a coping mechanism, and she wanted me to go to therapy to fix that, to make me more available for her to criticize, to make me more compliant. The thought sent a shiver down my spine. My marriage, the foundation of my adult life, was suddenly not what I thought it was. It was like I was living in a beautiful house, only to realize the walls were made of cardboard and the roof was slowly caving in. And the person who was supposed to be helping me renovate had just told me the whole thing needed to be condemned. The weight of that realization, the true gut-wrenching despair of a decade and a half being a lie, was just beginning to sink in. And it was so crushingly heavy. I went back for the second session. I had to. After Dr. Ramirez dropped that bombshell, I couldn't just walk away. My mind was a chaotic mess, a hurricane of doubt and fear. Part of me wanted to run, to pretend I never heard it, to go home and try even harder, to be the husband Sarah wanted. But another part, a tiny rebellious flicker, wanted answers, wanted to know why she would say such a thing. So, I sat on that absurdly soft couch again, feeling like an interrogation subject. Dr. Ramirez started gently. So Mark, you seemed quite shocked last week. Can you tell me what you were feeling when I suggested divorce? I took a deep breath. Shocked, Dr. Ramirez. Completely shocked. I came here to fix things, to fix myself. Not to end my marriage. I don't understand how you could suggest that so quickly. She nodded. I understand your reaction. It's a big statement. But it wasn't made lightly. Let's go back to what you told me. You said your wife sent you here because you are distant, quiet, not engaged. Is that correct? Yes, I confirmed. And she said I am checked out, that I don't listen, that I don't care about her feelings. And how do you feel when she tells you these things? She asked, leaning forward slightly. Bad. Like a failure, like I am letting her down. I try to be better, but it's like I can never quite get it right. No matter what I do, she finds something I am doing wrong. If I offer advice, I am invalidating her feelings. If I just listen, I am not being supportive enough. If I try to take initiative, I am being controlling. If I don't, I am passive. It's a lose-lose situation. The words tumbled out faster than I intended. It was the first time I had ever articulated this pattern even to myself. Dr. Ramirez wrote something down. So, you feel like you are constantly walking on eggshells. Like you can't do anything right in her eyes. Yeah, exactly, I try, I really do. But it's exhausting. I've just started to retreat, I guess. Keep my opinions to myself? You trying to initiate things, because it always leads to a fight, or me being told I am wrong. And when you retreat, what happens? She gets angry, says I am being distant, says I am not engaged, says I am making her feel like she's alone in the marriage, which then makes me feel worse, and I try harder, and the cycle starts again. I paused, the full weight of the absurdity of my situation hitting me. It's like I am damned if I do, and damned if I don't. Precisely, she said softly. Sounds like you are in a perpetual no-win situation, where your attempts to please her are constantly reframed as failures, and your attempts to cope with that failure are then used as further evidence of your shortcomings. She continued, "You mentioned feeling checked out. How does that manifest?" "I just disconnect. I'll be in the same room, but I'll be thinking about work, or a hobby, or anything other than the current conversation. It's like a mental escape hatch. Or I'll just zone out, stare at the wall. It's easier than trying to navigate the conversation and inevitably failing." "And how long have you been doing this? Disconnecting?" I thought about. "Years. It definitely got worse in the last year, which is probably why Sarah decided I needed therapy. But I remember doing it even early in our marriage, maybe after the first few years." "And before you met Sarah, were you a quiet, distant person?" "No," I said, surprised by the question. "Actually, I was pretty outgoing in college. I had a lot of friends. I was in a band, for crying out loud. I loved performing. I loved talking to people. I was vibrant, I guess." The word felt foreign, like describing a different person. Sarah always preferred quiet nights in. She said my friends were too loud. She didn't like my music. She said I was too much sometimes. So, I changed. I guess I changed for her. Dr. Ramirez wrote some more. Her pen scratching was the only sound in the room for a moment. Then she looked up, her expression grave. "Mark, what you are describing sounds like a classic pattern of emotional abuse and control. Your wife isn't sending you here to fix a problem with you. She's sending you here to ensure you remain compliant with her narrative. That you are the problem and she is the victim. She is systematically eroding your sense of self-worth, isolating you, and then blaming you for the very symptoms of your self-preservation." The words hit me like a physical blow. Emotional abuse, control eroding my self-worth. All those years, all those subtle criticisms, all those times I felt small and wrong and inadequate. It wasn't me, it was her. And my heart, which I thought had already stopped, just fractured a little more. The realization wasn't just heartbreaking, it was terrifying. I had been living in a psychological prison and I hadn't even known I was a prisoner. The word abuse hung in the air heavy and suffocating. My mind recoiled. Abuse? Sarah? Tezin Dummyhammer's Sarah wasn't abusive. She was just particular, demanding, maybe a little intense. But abuse, that was for terrible people, monsters. Not my wife, not the woman I loved, the mother of my kids. Abuse? I finally managed to croak out. "No, Dr. Ramirez, you must be mistaken. Sarah isn't abusive. She just has high standards. She just wants me to be the best version of myself." Dr. Ramirez sighed, a gentle, understanding sound. "Mark, abuse isn't always physical. Emotional abuse often leaves no visible scars, but the damage to a person's psyche can be profound. It's about a pattern of behavior designed to control another person, to diminish their self-worth, to make them feel dependent and responsible for the abuser's emotions and happiness. Tell me, do you feel responsible for Sarah's happiness?" "Of course," I said immediately. "Isn't that what marriage is? Making your partner happy. In a healthy partnership, both individuals contribute to the shared happiness, and both are responsible for their own emotional well-being. Does Sarah take responsibility for her own happiness, or does she consistently lay that burden on you?" I thought about it. Every argument, every quiet period, every time she was upset, it always came back to something I hadn't done, or something I had done wrong. She says if I were more engaged, she'd be happier. If I listened better, she'd feel loved. If I initiated more, she'd feel desired. My voice trailed off as the pattern became sickeningly clear. It was always on me. Always. And when you try to discuss your own feelings, your own needs, how does that go? She pressed. It doesn't really happen, I admitted. If I try to say I am feeling overwhelmed, she'll tell me I am being dramatic. If I say I need some space, she'll say I am abandoning her. If I say I am hurt by something she said, she'll flip it around and say I am making her feel guilty, or that I am too sensitive. So, your feelings are invalidated or turned back on you, making you the one at fault, even when you are expressing your own pain. Yeah, I whispered. My throat felt tight. Exactly. That, Mark, is a form of gaslighting. It's a manipulative tactic where someone makes you doubt your own perceptions, memory, or sanity. It's designed to make you question your own reality, so you become more reliant on their version of events. You said you started believing you were the problem. That's a common outcome for victims of gaslighting. Gaslighting. The word felt like a punch, colder and harder than abuse. Because it felt true, it resonated with a chilling accuracy. How many times had I replayed conversations in my head, convinced I was misremembering, convinced I was being too sensitive, convinced I was wrong. Sarah was so good at it. She'd twist my words, deny things she'd said, and then look at me with such hurt in her eyes, making me feel like the monster, and I always apologized. Oh, Dr. Ramirez asked. I thought of a recent one. A few weeks ago, I'd come home from work exhausted. Sarah had been planning a big family dinner for her parents, and she'd been stressed. I offered to help. What can I do? I asked, genuinely wanting to contribute. She snapped at me. You always wait until the last minute to offer. I've been doing everything all day. I was taken aback. I had offered to help repeatedly that week, and she'd said she had it handled. But I offered earlier, I said. You said you didn't need anything. She looked at me, eyes wide, as if I'd just sprouted a second head. I never said that, Mark. Why would I say that? I am drowning here. You clearly don't care about me or this dinner if you are making things up. She stormed off crying, and I was left standing there, feeling like an absolute villain. I ended up apologizing, of course, and then doing everything to make it up to her. She always does that. I told Dr. Ramirez, the memory still fresh and painful. She'll deny saying something even if I clearly remember it. And then she'll turn it around and make me out to be the bad guy. I start to question my memory, my sanity even. Dr. Ramirez just nodded slowly. That's a very clear example of gaslighting. It's designed to destabilize you, to make you feel crazy so you stop trusting your own judgment and rely on hers. And the quietness you mentioned? The checking out? Those are classic coping mechanisms for someone in a prolonged state of emotional invalidation and control. It's not a flaw in you, Mark. It's a natural protective response to an unhealthy environment. My head was spinning. All these years, I thought I was broken. All these years, I thought I was the one who needed fixing. And now, this woman, this stranger, was telling me that my brokenness was a symptom, not a cause. That my coping mechanisms were valid responses to a situation I hadn't even recognized as abuse. It was like suddenly understanding the language of a lifelong pain. And the deepest, most heartbreaking part of it was the realization of how much I had lost. My old self, my obrancy, my confidence, all stripped away, slowly, methodically by the woman I had built my life around. The seeds of the revelation had been planted, and they were growing into a truly devastating truth. The sessions continued. Each one felt like peeling back another layer of a carefully constructed illusion. Dr. Ramirez didn't just tell me these things. She guided me, gently but firmly, to see them for myself. She'd ask a question, and a memory would surface, a moment that I had dismissed or rationalized at the time. Now, seen through this new lens, they were undeniable proof. We talked about my friends, or rather, my lack of them. I used to have a close-knit group from college. We went to concerts, played poker, had a standing weekly dinner. But one by one they faded away. Sarah always had an issue with them. Dave is too loud, she'd say. He monopolizes conversations. Or Lisa is so negative. Why do you spend time with people who bring you down? She'd complain if I spent too much time with them, or if I went out without her. Eventually, it was just easier not to go. I drifted from my friends. I didn't even notice it was happening until Dr. Ramirez pointed it out. It's a common tactic in abusive relationships, he explained. Isolate the victim from their support network, so they have nowhere else to turn. Then there were the finances. Sarah handled everything. I'd always given her my paycheck, and she'd managed the bills, the savings, the investments. I had a small allowance for personal spending, but anything beyond that needed her approval. I thought it was efficient. She was good with money, better than me, I reasoned. Dr. Ramirez asked, "Do you have access to all your accounts? Do you know exactly where your money is going?" I hesitated. "Not really," I admitted. "I just trust her." She just nodded. Financial control is another significant red flag. It creates dependency. You become reliant on her, even for your basic needs. My hobbies too, the band I was in. I loved playing guitar. But Sarah said the noise bothered her, that it wasn't a grown-up hobby. She'd complain about the practice times, the late nights after gigs. Eventually, I sold my guitar. For us, I told myself, to focus on family. She praised me for being mature and putting her and the family first. Now I saw it differently. It was another piece of myself I'd given away. The kids. This was the hardest one to face. Sarah was very strict with them. Her way was the only way. If I tried to be more lenient, or if I offered a different approach to discipline, she'd shut me down instantly, often in front of the kids. "Mark, you are undermining my authority," she'd snap. Or, "You always let them get away with everything. No wonder they don't listen to me." I began to defer to her entirely on parenting decisions, even when I disagreed, to avoid conflict. My kids were starting to act differently towards me too. They'd go to Sarah for permission, knowing I'd be overruled. My relationship with them felt strained, distant. I felt like a secondary parent, an ineffective one. "She's isolating you from your children too, isn't she?" Dr. Ramirez observed. "By consistently undermining your authority and belittling your parenting choices, she's eroding your bond with them. They learn to see her as the sole authority, and you as the weak link." That hit me hard. My kids. This wasn't just about me anymore. This was about them. My children were being raised in this environment, witness to this dynamic, potentially being shaped by it. The thought made my stomach churn. I saw their occasional guardedness with me, their quick glances at their mother before answering my questions, their learned caution. It wasn't just my imagination, it was real. Every single thing I had considered a quirk of Sarah's, or a flaw in myself, was meticulously catalogued by Dr. Ramirez as a component of emotional abuse. Her criticisms of my quietness, control, her invalidation of my feelings, gaslighting, the pushing away my friends and hobbies, isolation, her financial control, dependency, her undermining my parenting, more control and damaging the kids. It was a suffocating web, woven so subtly and so slowly that I hadn't seen the threads until I was completely entangled. The realization wasn't a sudden explosion, but a slow, agonizing unraveling. Each session, another thread pulled, each thread revealing a darker, more insidious pattern. My perfect life wasn't perfect. It was a perfectly constructed illusion, designed to make me believe I was lucky to have her, and broken without her. And the heartbreak was immense. It wasn't just losing a marriage. It was losing the very idea of what my marriage was. It was losing 15 years of my life to a mirage, and the self I had sacrificed to maintain it. The truth, once seen, couldn't be unseen. It was like living in a grayscale world, and suddenly seeing in full color. Everything I had previously accepted as normal, or even loving behavior from Sarah, was now exposed as a calculated tactic of control and manipulation. The gaslighting, the isolation, the financial control, the constant criticisms, disguised as constructive feedback. It all clicked into place with horrifying clarity. In one session, Dr. Ramirez drew a diagram on a whiteboard. 2 circles overlapping slightly. In a healthy relationship, she explained, here is shared space, but also individual space, autonomy and connection. Then she drew another diagram. 1 large circle completely encompassing a much smaller one. In an emotionally abusive relationship, one partner's circle completely engulfs the others. T here is no separate identity, no autonomy. The victim ceases to be an individual and becomes an extension of the abuser. She pointed to the small circle. This is you, Mark. You have been systematically diminished until your sense of self is almost entirely subsumed by her. I stared at the drawing, a cold knot forming in my stomach. It was me. The small circle, almost invisible within the larger one. I had always prided myself on being adaptable, on being a team player. But I hadn't been adapting. I had been disappearing. I hadn't been a team player. I had been a pawn. Think about it. Dr. Ramirez continued, her voice gentle. Your hobbies, your friends, your opinions, your financial independence, even your relationship with your children, all of these have been chipped away or brought under her control. And your natural, healthy responses to this, your quietness, your checking out, she blames you for them, making you feel guilty and responsible for her unhappiness. It's a closed loop, designed to keep you trapped. This was the unveiling. It wasn't just about specific incidents anymore. It was about the entire structure of our life together. It was a house built on sand, and the sand was slowly being washed away, revealing the rotten foundation beneath. And the rot went all the way through. I felt a profound sense of grief. It wasn't just for the marriage, but for the person I used to be. The vibrant, outgoing guy who loved playing music and hanging out with his friends. He was gone, replaced by this quiet, anxious, constantly apologetic version of myself. Sarah hadn't just broken my spirit. She had systematically disassembled my personality, piece by piece, until I was just a shadow. And the worst part, I had participated. I had allowed it to happen. I had even, in my desperate need for her approval, helped her do it. What do? I asked, my voice raw, the grief finally breaking through. How do I even begin to untangle this? It's been 15 years. We have kids, a life. That's the difficult part, she acknowledged. The first step is recognizing it. You've done that. The second is accepting that you cannot change her. This is her pattern, deeply ingrained. You've tried, haven't you? To be better? To be what she wants? I nodded, tears stinging my eyes. For years, I've tried everything. And has it ever worked? Has she ever truly been satisfied? No, I admitted, a bitter laugh escaping my lips. Never. It's always something else. The goalpost always moves. Exactly. Because the goal isn't your improvement, Mark. The goal is her control, and her emotional well-being is not your responsibility. You cannot fix her. You can only save yourself. She looked directly at me. And that brings us back to my initial suggestion. To save yourself, to reclaim your life, your identity, and to protect your children from growing up in this dynamic, you need to separate from her. You need to divorce her. This time, the word didn't hit me with the same initial shock. It still hurt. A deep, aching pain in my chest. But it was a different kind of pain. It wasn't the pain of a bomb dropping. It was the pain of a surgeon's scalpel cutting out a malignant tumor. It was necessary. It was brutal. But it was the only way to heal. The thought of divorce brought up a tidal wave of fear. The kids. The house. The unknown. The judgment. The sheer logistical nightmare. But beneath the fear, a tiny ember of hope flickered. The hope of breathing freely again, the hope of rediscovering the man I used to be. The hope of a life without constant criticism, without walking on eggshells, without being blamed for everything. A life where I could just be myself. The weight of that decision, the enormous, terrifying magnitude of it, settled heavily on my shoulder. But for the first time in a very long time, I felt like I was standing on solid ground, even if that ground was about to crumble. The days after that session felt surreal. I was still living under Sarah's roof, playing the part of the compliant husband. But inside, a seismic shift had occurred. It was like I was observing my own life from a distance, seeing the strings attached to my every move, the puppet master pulling them. The anger was simmering, hot and righteous, but it was buried deep beneath a layer of calculated calm. I couldn't confront her yet, not until I had a plan. Dr. Ramirez had warned me. When you attempt to leave an abusive relationship, the abuser's control tactics often escalate. Be prepared for her to intensify her efforts to pull you back in, to make you feel guilty, or to undermine your resolve. She will likely use the children, your shared history, or even threats of self-harm. You need a strong support system and a clear strategy. Support system? I had none. Sarah had meticulously dismantled mine over the years. My family lived far away, and I hadn't truly opened up to them in years, always putting on a brave face about my perfect marriage. My friends were long gone. I was alone. The kids. That was my biggest hurdle. How do you tell your children their parents are divorcing? Not because of a mutual breakdown, but because one parent was systematically hurting the other. How do you protect them from the fallout? How do you explain it in a way that doesn't vilify their mother, but still justifies your decision? It felt impossible. I started small. I secretly opened a new bank account, a personal one she couldn't access. I began siphoning off a small amount from my paycheck each week, just enough to start building a little nest egg, a safety net. I updated my resume in secret, just in case I needed to look for a new job or different living arrangements. I researched divorce lawyers, lurking on legal forums, reading about custody battles. The sheer amount of planning felt overwhelming, like preparing for a war I never wanted to fight. I also started secretly keeping a journal, something Dr. Ramirez suggested. I wrote down every instance of gaslighting, every cutting remark, every time she made me feel small. It was painful to revisit these moments, but seeing them written down, black and white, solidified my resolve. It wasn't in my head. It was real, and it was systemic. My interactions with Sarah became strained. I was present, but not truly there. I offered less, knowing any effort would be met with criticism. I retreated even further, but this time it wasn't out of defeat, but out of strategy. She noticed, of course. You are being even more quiet, Mark, she said one evening, her voice laced with accusation. Is therapy even working? You seem worse. My heart hammered in my chest. I wanted to scream the truth at her. No, Sarah. Therapy is working perfectly. It's helping me see you for what you are. But I didn't. I just mumbled, it's a process. It takes time, she scoffed. Well, you are not trying hard enough. What are you even talking about with this therapist? Are you telling them all your issues? We're talking about our dynamics, I said, choosing my words carefully. And my feelings. And your expectations. Her eyes narrowed. My expectations? What about my expectations? Are you saying my expectations are too high? Is that what your therapist is telling you? That I am the problem? The ice in her voice was chilling. This was it. The escalation. She was already getting suspicious. I knew if I admitted the truth, it would ignite a full-blown war, and I wasn't ready. Not yet. No, Sarah, I lied, my voice flat. She's helping me understand how I can meet your expectations better. She seemed to relax slightly, a smug little smile playing on her lips. Good. That's what you need to do. Because I am not going to be unhappy forever, Mark. I deserve better. Her words, once designed to make me feel guilty, now just filled me with a cold resolve. I finally saw the true nature of the manipulation. Her happiness was just a tool to control me. Her deserving better was a veiled threat. The mask had slipped, and what lay beneath was chillingly clear. I had to get out. For myself. For my kids. The confrontation was coming and I knew it would be ugly. But for the first time, I felt a flicker of courage, not just fear. I was not going to be her victim anymore. The weight of my secret was crushing. Living with Sarah, pretending everything was fine, while secretly planning my escape, felt like a constant performance. Every touch, every shared meal, every bedtime story read to the kids felt tainted by the lie. But the alternative, confronting her without a plan, was suicide. Dr. Ramirez had emphasized patience, strategic action, and self-preservation. My sessions with Dr. Ramirez became my lifeline. She helped me build courage, rehearse difficult conversations, and mentally prepare for the inevitable fallout. She encouraged me to reconnect with anyone, however distant, who might offer a shred of support. I hesitantly reached out to my older sister Maria. We hadn't been close in years. Sarah had always found reasons to criticize Maria, subtly pushing me away. I sent her a tentative text. Hey sis, long time, can we talk? Something serious is going on. She called me back within minutes, surprised but concerned. Mark, are you okay? You never call. My voice trembled as I started to explain, carefully, what had been happening. I didn't use the words emotional abuse right away, but I described the constant criticism, the gaslighting, the feeling of walking on eggshells, the erosion of my self-worth. I told her how Sarah had sent me to therapy and what the therapist had said. There was a long silence on the other end. Then Maria's voice, quiet but firm. Mark, I always suspected something wasn't right. Sarah always seemed off. Controlling, I just didn't know how to say it without you getting defensive. I am so sorry, little brother. I am here for you. Whatever you need. Tears welled up in my eyes. It was the first external validation I'd had in years. Someone believed me. Someone saw it. It was like a dam breaking. I poured out everything. The financial control, the isolation, the fear for my kids. Maria listened patiently, without judgment. By the end of the call, I felt a lightness I hadn't experienced in years. I wasn't alone. Maria's support, and Dr. Ramirez's guidance, my escape plan started to take shape. The first step was finding a place to go. I couldn't stay in the house. It was her domain, and she would make my life a living hell. Maria offered her spare room 1,000 miles away, but I needed to stay close for the kids. I found a small, cheap apartment for rent, a few towns over. Nothing fancy, just a place to land. It felt like a bunker, a safe zone. I put a deposit down, paid with the money I'd secretly saved. Next was the children. This was the hardest part. Dr. Ramirez advised that I speak to them gently, openly, and assure them of my love without bad-mouthing their mother. Focus on the fact that sometimes parents can't live together anymore, but that both parents will always love them. Avoid details that will put them in the middle, she counseled. Their relationship with their mother is theirs. You protect them by being a stable, loving parent, not by vilifying her. I also started compiling legal documents. Our marriage certificate, the kids' birth certificates, financial statements I could access, anything I might need for the divorce proceedings. It felt cold, calculated, but necessary. This wasn't just about escaping. It was about building a new future. The day I decided to tell Sarah, the air in the house felt thick with unspoken words. My heart pounded against my ribs. I had rehearsed it 100 times in my head, but nothing could prepare me for the reality. I waited until the kids were at school. She was in the living room, scrolling through her phone. "Sarah," I started, my voice betraying my nervousness. She looked up, annoyed. "What is it, Mark? Can't you see I'm busy?" "We need to talk," I said, my voice gaining strength as I pushed past the fear. "About us? About our marriage?" Her expression hardened. "What about it? Are you finally going to admit you are the problem and fix yourself?" "No," I said, taking a deep breath. This was it. I am not the problem. We are not working, and I can't do this anymore. I want a divorce. The words hung in the air, shattering the false peace of our home. Her face drained of color. Her phone clattered to the floor. And then the explosion. The silence after I said divorce lasted only a second, but it felt like an eternity. Then Sarah erupted. It wasn't a scream, not at first. It was a low, guttural growl, then a torrent of accusations. "Divorce? Are you serious, Mark? What on earth are you talking about? Are you insane? This is that therapist, isn't it? She's filling your head with nonsense." Her voice rose with each word, becoming shrill and hysterical. "You went there to fix yourself, not to blame me. You think I am the problem? After everything I've done for you? For this family?" She was pacing now, her hands clenching and unclenching. Her face was contorted with a mixture of rage and what looked like genuine hurt. But I knew better now. It was the performance, the victim act. "I've tolerated your distance, your quietness, your moods for years, Mark. I've tried to make this marriage work single-handedly. I've given you everything, and this is how you repay me. By abandoning me. By abandoning our children." "Sarah, please. Let's talk calmly." I tried, but she just scoffed. "Calmly? How can I be calm when you are ruining our lives? When you are destroying our family? What about the kids? How could you do this to them? You selfish bastard." The usual accusations rolled off her tongue, honed by years of practice. Selfish, uncaring, abandoning, destroyer. I had heard them all before, every time I'd expressed a need or disagreed with her. But this time, they didn't cut as deep. I knew her play. "This isn't about blaming anyone, Sarah. This is about us not being able to continue this way. It's unhealthy." "Unhealthy? You are unhealthy, Mark. You are clearly having a breakdown. I sent you to therapy to fix your issues, not to have you come back and blame me for everything." "What did that woman say to you? Did she tell you to hate me? To leave me?" She told me I deserved to be happy, I said, my voice steady now, fueled by a newfound resolve. She told me I deserve a healthy relationship. And this isn't it. That seemed to truly infuriate her. The mask of victimhood slipped completely, revealing pure rage. Happy? You think you'll be happy without me? You think you can just walk away from everything we built? You have nothing without me, Mark. Nothing. You'll be alone. You'll lose everything. You'll lose the kids. The threat about the kids was the lowest blow, and it stung. My heart lurched. But I had prepared for this. I will never abandon our children, Sarah, and I will fight for fair custody. I've already spoken to a lawyer. Her eyes widened in genuine surprise, then narrowed into slits of fury. A lawyer? You think you can just do this? You think you can just take my kids from me? I will ruin you, Mark. I will make sure you lose everything. I will tell everyone what a terrible father you are, what a terrible husband. I will take everything. The venom in her voice was chilling. This wasn't the hurt Sarah. This was the manipulative, controlling Sarah, unmasked and terrifying. But I had to stand my ground. You can try, Sarah, I said, my voice surprisingly calm. But I am not afraid anymore. I am done walking on eggshells. I am done being blamed for your unhappiness. I am leaving. I walked over to the door, grabbed my pre-packed bag, the one I'd secretly stashed earlier. I hadn't packed much, just essentials. I knew I needed to get out before things escalated further. Where are you going? She shrieked, following me. You can't just leave, you can't. I am going to a friend's place for now, I lied, to avoid giving her my actual address. My lawyer will be in touch. As I opened the door, she lunged at me, grabbing my arm. No, Mark, don't do this, please. I love you. Don't leave me. Her voice was suddenly pleading, tears streaming down her face. It was another tactic, the sudden shift from rage to desperate victim, designed to pull me back in. The emotional whiplash was jarring, but I had seen this before. I gently but firmly detached her hand. Goodbye, Sarah. I walked out the door and didn't look back. The sound of her wails, then smashing glass from inside the house, echoed behind me. The silence in my car was deafening, broken only by my ragged breaths. I was shaking, adrenaline coursing through me, but as I drove away from the house that had been my prison, away from the woman who had systematically eroded my soul, a strange feeling began to bloom amidst the fear and pain. It was the first taste of freedom I had experienced in a very long time. And it was terrifying, exhilarating, and absolutely heartbreaking all at once. The first few weeks after leaving were a blur of raw emotion and logistical nightmares. Sarah's threats weren't empty. She immediately launched a full-scale assault. She called my family, crying hysterically, accusing me of abandoning her and the children, spinning a tale of my sudden, inexplicable breakdown. She badmouthed me to mutual friends, turning them against me. She started withholding the kids, making it difficult for me to see them, forcing me to get temporary custody orders through my lawyer. My lawyer, a no-nonsense woman named Brenda, was a godsend. She listened patiently to my story, understood the dynamics, and assured me that Sarah's behavior was typical for a high-conflict divorce, especially when the abuser was losing control. She's trying to make you pay, Mark. Don't engage. Let me handle it. The emotional toll was immense. Every night, I would collapse in the small apartment, exhausted from the day's battles, haunted by the thought of my kids, who were caught in the crossfire. There were days I wanted to give up, to go back just for the sake of peace, just for the familiarity. But then I would remember Dr. Ramirez's words, Maria's unwavering support, and the suffocating feeling of being that smaller circle, trapped within Sarah's control. I held on to the fragile hope of a future where I could breathe. Dr. Ramirez continued to be my rock. In our sessions, she helped me process the grief, the anger, the guilt. She reminded me that my actions were not selfish, but an act of self-preservation and ultimately an act of love for my children, by showing them what a healthy life could look like. She helped me reframe my identity. I wasn't the broken husband. I was a man rediscovering his strength. Reconnecting with my kids was the most important thing. Our first few visits were strained. Sarah had clearly poisoned their minds, filling them with her version of events. But I held steady. I hugged them tightly. I listened to them. I reassured them that my love for them was unconditional and would never change. I didn't badmouth Sarah. I just focused on being present, on creating a safe, loving space for them during our visits. Slowly, hesitantly, they started to open up again. Seeing their smiles, hearing their laughter, was like water to a parched soul. The divorce itself was brutal. Sarah fought me on everything. Custody, assets, even the smallest sentimental items. But because I had been so meticulously prepared, and because Brenda was such a skilled lawyer, we eventually reached a settlement. It wasn't perfect, but it was fair. I got shared custody, which was my absolute priority. And then one day it was over. The papers were signed. I was officially divorced. There was no grand celebration, just a quiet, almost melancholic sense of finality. It was done. The marriage was over. The chains were broken. The heartbreaking part wasn't just about the initial shock or the painful divorce. It was about the slow, agonizing process of rebuilding. It was about facing the years of lost self, the friendships I had led with her, the hobbies I had abandoned. It was about mourning the life I thought I had, and accepting the reality of the life I did. But in the ashes of that broken marriage, something new began to grow. I picked up a guitar again, tentatively at first, then with a growing passion. I started reconnecting with old friends, some of whom were surprisingly understanding, having suspected something was off with Sarah all along. I joined a new local band, finding joy in playing music again. I volunteered at a local animal shelter, something I'd always wanted to do but never had time for. My relationship with my kids blossomed. Without Sarah's constant undermining, I was able to be the father I always wanted to be. We cooked together, went on hikes, played board games. They saw a calmer, happier version of me. The scars were still there, deep and sometimes aching. The trust issues, the fear of judgment, the lingering self-doubt. But Dr. Ramirez continued to help me heal, to understand that these were the wounds of survival, not flaws. I was no longer the quiet, distant man Sarah had accused me of being. I was still a quiet person by nature, but it was a comfortable quiet, not a fearful one. I was engaged, passionate, and for the first time in a very long time, genuinely happy. My wife sent me to therapy to fix myself, and the therapist told me to divorce her. It was the most heartbreaking, terrifying, and ultimately the most liberating advice I ever received. My life was shattered, but from the pieces, I was finally building something real, something true, and something entirely my own.